Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 13. So, do you think anything has changed since we've been gone? Erza turned to look at him briefly, then looked back in the direction they were walking and gave a small shrug. It's only been a little over a week, and Master didn't send us any emergency messages. Why? Were you hoping for something? Naruto simply chuckled, stretching, then placed both hands behind his head as they walked. Not really. It's just nice to have things happen that spice up life now and then, you know. So our little trip wasn't spicy enough for you? The dangerous undertone in her voice immediately put Naruto on edge. That's not what I meant at all. I was referring to things about the guild. You keep my life plenty interesting, and I love you for it. Erza let out something like a contented hum, and they continued walking further down the streets of Magnolia Town towards the Fairy Tale Guild Hall. Out of the corner of his eyes, Naruto noticed his girlfriend shift the large horn she was carrying over to her other hand. Are you sure you don't want me to carry it again? I'm fine, thank you, though. I'm going to leave it in the guild for now anyway, until you can apply those shrinking seals on it. I can go stop by an. A loud yell caused him to stop talking and he focused on a person ahead of them just as they turned around and quickly started running away. What was that about? I'm not sure. Erza turned her head to look at him. You were saying? Oh, I was going to say that I can go home really quick to get those seals now, and just meet you back at the guild. She gave him a brief smile and a nod. I'd appreciate it. It will be the only way we can get it in the front door of the house anyway. Naruto grinned inwardly as he thought about her last comment. He had only briefly mentioned his home, but recently Erza had begun remarking that she felt it was her home now as well. It made him feel warm, deep down. Shifting slightly, Naruto moved a little closer to her as they walked so that his arm brushed against hers. He quickly grabbed her hand, giving it a quick squeeze. I'll meet you at the guild then. I'm going to go ahead and change out of this outfit at home before I arrive. Her head turned slightly as she murmured acknowledgement, then quickly squeezed his hand before walking off a little faster, breaking their brief contact. He was only a little saddened that she broke away so quickly. Her phobia of public displays of affection always left him feeling that way, but he figured that he'd grow accustomed to it eventually. It did help him keep his identity a secret, so he couldn't begrudge it too much. Watching her continue walking towards the guild hall for a few more moments, he found himself frowning for some reason when he realized that she never looked back towards where they split apart, not even once. Quickly squashing that feeling, he knew it was childish of him to think that she should have, even if she probably would have a week ago. Erza was obviously quite distracted about something on their way back to the guild, but every time Naruto asked if anything was wrong she just shook her head and said she felt that she was thinking about something she overheard briefly in a bar. Naturally he offered to help her remember, but she just gave him a small smile and said she had already sent an investigation request through her business. That was 2 days ago, and while he hadn't brought it up since then, he knew how her company operated well enough to believe that she probably got a response the same day, yesterday at the latest. Naruto's lips formed a tight line behind his mask, then he promptly flashed away towards his house. Erza is back. Lucy first blinked, immediately recognizing the name. Her moment of clarity was quickly clouded, however, upon noticing the pained expression on the face of Loki, who had just run out of the guild hall after trying to seduce her then immediately run away. Quickly adding to her confusion was the panicked looks of Natsu and Gray, who went from fighting to standing upright, completely rigid, then promptly breaking out into their own shouts of panic. No more than 2 minutes later, heavy footsteps could be heard from the entrance of the guild. Turning to look, Lucy's eyes became saucers as the red-headed Erza Scarlet walked in. She took a moment to bask in the presence of the older, more glamorous woman, then looked at what she was holding. It was a huge horn of some sort. Its size either belied its weight, or Erza was just really, really strong. I'm back. Is Master here? I have a question for him. Lucy vaguely heard someone near her reply to Erza's question as she focused on exactly how the armored woman spoke. Her voice was deeper than she was expecting, but for some reason it seemed to fit her really well. It was definitely commanding, even after only hearing her speak briefly, and it was becoming easy to understand how some might respect her just because of the way she seemed to carry herself. Oh, the local townspeople decorated the horn of a demon that I helped subdue. No worries, I won't leave it here. Erza turned to look at someone nearby, who must have asked her what the horn was. Is it a nuisance to leave it here? It won't be here for very long. The person quickly waved their hands, saying it wasn't a problem at all, but before they had even finished talking, Erza turned away and cleared her throat. If anyone wasn't focusing on her for some reason previously, they were now. Anyway, I've been hearing and reading things about a lot of you, causing trouble for Master yet again. I've known several of you for a long time, and the longer these troubles continue, the harder I find it to forgive you for what you're doing. Lucy listened, shivering slightly as Erza started dressing down various guild members one by one. The biggest shock of all was seeing Natsu and Gray acting like best friends in front of her. Not only that, but Natsu had started talking like happy. Hearing a sigh next to her, Lucy turned her head to see Lizana standing nearby, arms folded over her chest and a small frown on her face. She must have noticed Lucy turn to look at her, because she looked at the other girl and smiled after a second. It's not usually like this all the time, I swear. Lucy was trying to smile back, but simply let out a half-hearted laugh. Really? That's good. All these things going on, I don't know if my heart can take it. I haven't been here that long yet. Lizana was about to say something else, before two loud yells muffled her voice. Both of them turned to look where the voices came from, only to see Natsu and Gray staring at Erza, expressions of disbelief on their faces. A large portion of the guild had gone quiet, only for hushed murmurs to pick up immediately after. No way, did she really ask that? Those three, I never thought I'd see the day that happened. I thought she already has one, though. Well, this is interesting. Mirajan was smirking as she stepped closer, between Lucy and Lizana. I wonder if it's just going to be those three that team up, or if Naruto-kun will be going with them. Lizana looked towards her sister. If Naruto-Nisan goes with them, then they'll be the strongest team in Fairy Tail by far. But if he doesn't? Mirajan chuckled and shook her head, her hands placed on her hips. Naruto-kun would have to be on their team for them to be the strongest. That goes without saying. Lizana hummed to herself for a second before nodding. True. Lucy simply rubbed at her forehead, feeling a headache coming on. Okay, wait. You two keep talking about this Naruto guy. I've been reading about Fairy Tail for years, and I've never seen any publication mention anyone named Naruto. Is there someone even stronger than Fire Shadow? Lizana and Mirajan looked at each other, then back at Lucy before they both broke out into fits of giggles simultaneously. Hey, what's so funny? Lizana tried to suppress her giggles, waving her hand at the frowning girl as she took a couple deep breaths. I'm sorry, Lucy, don't take it personally. It's just been so long since we've had someone join us, so we're not used to people not knowing. The silver-haired girl looked like she was about to say more, but a small flash of gold and a light breeze kicked up nearby, with a deep masculine voice following not long after. Sheesh, who's been talking about me? I was sneezing non-stop at home. As Lucy turned to where the voice was coming from, she stopped and looked at Lizana again when the girl let out a squeal and simply pounced. Turning to follow the trajectory of the flying girl, her eyes went wide as she caught a glance of him. Fire Shadow laughed from behind his mask, expertly caught the flying Lizana and proceeded to twirl her about a couple times as both of them laughed. When they stopped and he set her down on her feet, she began talking to him animatedly as Lucy looked on. Curious, she turned to look at Mirajan, who was looking at the two with a small smile. What's up with those two? Lizana seems to be the most normal of everyone here. Mirajan looked at Lucy briefly, offering a larger smile before turning back to look at her sister and Fire Shadow. Naruto saved Lizana's life a while back, and ever since she's looked to him as another brother. Lucy nodded at first, but then it finally clicked, and her eyes became saucers. Wait, Fire Shadow. His name is Naruto. Mirajan didn't answer, however, as she had moved over to where her sister and Naruto were chatting. Lucy had to do a double take as she realized Fire Shadow had since removed his mask, and he was hot. She idly watched as Mirajan welcomed him back, then gave him a brief hug and a kiss on the cheek, which he returned, then she wandered off back towards the bar. The shock of this revelation was still going through her when Lizana quickly moved back over to her, grabbed her arm, and forcefully tugged her over towards where Fire Shadow was looking at her curiously. Naruto Nisan, I'd like you to meet Lucy. She just joined us while you were on vacation. Natsu and Happy helped her break up a slave gang. Naruto's eyebrows raised slightly upon hearing just how she came to join Fairy Tail, but quickly settled down as he offered her a big smile, causing the markings on his face to stretch. Hey there, Lucy. Welcome to Fairy Tail. I hope nothing has caused you to go crazy yet. Lucy was standing ramrod straight, blushing and sweating. No. Everything has been fine. Really fine. The girl gulped audibly as one of Naruto's eyebrows arched upwards, and he appeared ready to say something else until Lizana gently hit him on the arm. Naruto Nisan, you're scaring her. Naruto looked flabbergasted, holding his hands up in a surrendering gesture. But I'm not doing anything. Lizana stuck her tongue out at him briefly, then draped an arm around Lucy's neck, causing the girl to settle down a little. Silly. It's not every day a girl in her prime meets the strongest mage in Fairy Tail, and not only that, he's the best looking one too. Lizana. Naruto had a slight blush working across his face, and appeared to be rather surprised to hear Lizana say something like that. What? It's true. Just don't tell Natsu, Mirane, or Erza that I said so. She giggled for a moment as Naruto chuckled and scratched at the back of his head, but then whirled on Lucy again. Oh yeah. Are you a member of his fan club? Because if you aren't, we have to get you signed up. This time Naruto groaned, but it managed to bring Lucy back to her senses. Her disposition immediately brightened, and she pulled her pin out of the pouch she kept around her waist, near her keys. Yep, here it is. I got so lucky to have such a small number. Lizana was wowed, it showed on her face. That's impressive, you really are lucky to get one that low and not have been part of a guild. Lucy blinked. What? Did the guilds get to become members before? Lizana giggled, pulling a pin out of a pocket of her shorts. Yep, she flashed the pin at Lucy, who stared, mouth agape. Number 3. That's so lucky. Lizana shrugged, pocketing her pin. As members of the same guild Naruto Nisan was in, we were given the option of becoming his first fans, if we wanted to. Lucy vaguely heard Naruto mumble something about embarrassing, before a thought popped into her mind. So wait, if you're number 3, then who is number 1? That would be me. Lucy whirled around, only to see a mouth set into a firm line. Looking down, she only noticed a metal breastplate, and looking up slightly, she saw the eyes of Erza Scarlet gazing down upon her. Hi. Erza's mouth twitched upwards into a smile, before nodding slightly and moving around Lucy, her attention now centered on Naruto. She stopped a little over a step away from him, folding her arms over her chest. Did you bring it? Naruto nodded at her, smiling slightly. Of course. Erza smiled again, a little bigger than before, then turned back to Lucy who had been following the exchange. I saw your keys, I'm assuming that means you are a celestial mage. Ah, yes, I am. Lucy was beginning to sweat again, hoping that Lizana would come to her defense again if she needed it. But it seems the silver-haired girl had wandered off to talk with Natsu and Gray, the former of which who was gesticulating wildly. That's good, we haven't had a celestial mage in Fairy Tail for a long time. I'd like to see how well you handle yourself in action, so I'll be bringing you with us on our next mission. You should prepare yourself and pack enough supplies for about a week. As Lucy simply blinked and began to stutter, she heard Naruto utter Erza's name. What? She turned to look back at him again, but he simply gave her a flat stare. They both stared at each other for several long seconds before Erza sighed, then turned her gaze to Lucy once again. Fine. Would you be willing to come with us? With only Natsu and Gray coming, I could use another female to even things out. Not only that, but I really would like to see what you are capable of. Lucy blinked again, slightly surprised at actually being asked to go along this time, but slowly nodded her head. Erza clapped her hands together, offering a small smile. Great. We leave later this afternoon, so meet back up here when you're ready. Oh, so Luigi is coming with us too. Lucy immediately whirled on Natsu, who had walked over as Erza finished talking. It's Lucy. My name is Lucy. You should know that by now. It is. Oh. Natsu simply stared at her for a few seconds, blank-faced, but briefly grinned and winked before turning back to Erza. Hey, why don't we bring Lizanna too? The redhead shrugged. You can ask, but because of her support abilities she's usually always tapped for missions already. Woo, thanks, I'll go ask. Natsu immediately scampered off to go find Lizanna, while Naruto began chuckling. Both Erza and Lucy looked at him, the former asking the obvious question, what's so funny? Naruto simply shook his head as his chuckles settled down, but kept the smile on his face. Nothing important. When do we leave? Lucy barely noticed as Erza tensed for a moment, then the redhead sighed again and shook her head. You're not coming. She couldn't be sure, but to Lucy it felt as if the temperature had dropped several degrees where she was standing. Naruto wasn't smiling anymore, but he didn't exactly look angry either. His lips were in a tight line and his eyes were narrowed slightly, however. May I ask why? I feel as if I've been neglecting to give any attention to Natsu and Gray for a while. I want to see how they have grown. I also want to see Lucy's capabilities. If you come along, we will all use you as a crutch and allow you to do the hardest parts, which I know you will volunteer to do. Naruto had closed his eyes as he listened, and when Erza finished talking he let out a small sigh and nodded. Fine, I've been putting off my visit to Era anyway, I guess this is a good time to get it done. His eyes opened slowly. I'll miss you. Erza let out a small chuckle and walked up to him. Ah, it will only be for a week. You'll survive. We've been apart longer. Lucy stared, mouth agape and blushing, as Erza moved up to Naruto to give him a brief kiss on the lips. Without saying anything else, she turned around and saw Lucy, giving the girl what she felt was a rather predatory smile. It didn't take long for her to feel Erza's hand on her shoulder, turning her in another direction, and then the redhead's arm settled across her shoulders as they began walking towards the exit together. Ah, Lucy, we'll get to know each other over the course of this next mission, but before that, allow me to lay down some ground rules, okay? The blonde girl was sweating as she looked up slightly towards Erza's face. The woman still had that predatory grin, and her eyes were shadowed by her hair. She couldn't do anything more than gulp and nod nervously as she was led away. Naruto sat in what he felt was a rather uncomfortable wooden chair in one of the secure file rooms of the Mage Council in Era. As an S-rank mage, they had a responsibility every couple of months to report in on their completed missions, as well as being able to take on any potential higher-level missions that the Mage Council itself may not want to give specifically to any guilds. Of course, along with the rather minor responsibilities also came a few privileges, one of which he was using now. Certain files were off-limits to most mages, though most likely wouldn't bother looking through a bunch of pieces of paper either. Naruto was often curious as to how much he was being observed, however, so whenever he got the chance he would check out his own file to see what was being said about him, especially if there was anything different from what was in his file back at Fairy Tail. Typically there wasn't, though he had been caught by surprise a few times, especially as of late. It seems that he had begun to be monitored a lot more recently. At first it didn't bother him too much, but when he was given an entire file of his own instead of being kept with the rest of Fairy Tail, he began to wonder. You've had another 3 pages added to your file since the last time we were here. They really are paying attention to you now, aren't they? I don't like it, but I guess it's only natural. When you have someone as powerful as I, and we, are, then it only makes sense. HRMPH. I still don't see why you don't take steps to let everyone know who's in charge. It's been years, and I'm getting bored again. Well, according to Makarov, he thinks the mission he gave me long ago will be initiated soon, and it also feels like there is a certain buzz in the air. Something tells me things are going to start picking up. They'd better, or all. Do you get a kick out of giving me empty threats? TCH. Just you wait, Naruto. Now, someone is coming. I know. I feel it. Placing his feet up onto the chair next to him, Naruto leaned back and pretended to casually flip through his own file, skimming through most of the stuff he'd already looked through. The presence he sensed stopped and hovered for a few moments not too far away from him, as if trying to confirm who was in the room, or trying to think of something to say as a greeting. After the first few moments of sensing the presence, Naruto knew who it was by just how they felt. There were very few people who were able to conceal the sheer amount of power they possessed to such a degree, but years of honing his own chakra detection abilities allowed him to more easily identify those who were trying to hide themselves. It was something all shinobi learned, though there were a few who excelled in the field of detection to such a degree they had a classification of their own, sensors. He wasn't one, but after being around people who could utilize chakra, magic to them, to a large degree and not be able to hide it, he eventually figured out how to manipulate his own detection senses to a much finer degree. A brief thought passed through his mind to put his mask on, but since everyone important in Erza already knew who he was, and no one unimportant could get into this room, he decided against it. Fancy meeting you here, Altair. Or should I say, fancy meeting you here again. There was a moment's hesitation before soft footsteps grew louder, until the dark-haired woman finally appeared from around a stack of cabinets, tossing him a brief, coy smile. The only real difference between their meeting up now compared to previous times is that they were both alone. Naruto was usually here with Erza, and Altair was typically always with her immediate superior, Seagrain. To be fair, I don't believe we've ever met in this room before. On another note, you're going to have to teach me how you're able to detect me. Not only would it help me do my job better, I just think it would be handy to know as well. Naruto snorted as he flipped through a few more pages. Sorry, can't do that. It's a trade secret. Altair chuckled lightly, and Naruto looked up from the papers to watch her as she pulled out a chair next to the one he had his feet raised onto, then sat down. Did Seagrain let you off your leash or something? It's not exactly like there is anything going on in here. Altair frowned at him. That's not very nice, but since we're on the subject I'm assuming that means Erza let you off your leash as well. One of Naruto's eyebrows shot sky high. Well, I never really looked at it like that, but for the sake of not getting into a boring argument, touché. Altair folded her arms over her chest and leaned back in her chair, a smile slowly returning to her face. I guess your words do have a hint of truth to them, though as a mage council inspector placed under Seagrain, I still have a fair amount of freedom so long as he doesn't need anything specific. Naruto didn't say anything in response to that, but, med, as he switched back to looking at his profile once again. He didn't want to act callous to the woman, but he didn't particularly care for Seagrain, and he couldn't help but place his disdain upon her as an extension since she worked for him. So where is Erza anyway? I think this is the first time I've ever seen you in Erza without her being here as well. The blonde shrugged. Well, we are a team, and we'd just come here to report in every couple months to do our reports. I've been here plenty of times without her, but you likely only noticed the times where I was with her because Seagrain seems to have this thing about annoying her as best he can. As for where she is, I honestly don't know. She wanted to do a mission with some of her old friends in the guild for a change, so I wasn't going to intrude. That's sweet of you, but how does Seagrain annoy her, if you don't mind me asking? It always appeared as if their talks were amicable. Altair's voice was laced with curiosity, but he wasn't sure if she was mocking him or not in regards to the sweet part. Because of the overall tone of her voice, Naruto looked up from the papers again, only to find her watching him intently. She usually avoids talking about it, but after talking with him she'll be in a bad mood all the way back to the guild, and no amount of prodding on my part can get any information out of her. Eventually I just stopped asking. I see, so that's why. Altair's voice began to drift off, and Naruto watched and waited for her to continue, but she had closed her eyes and looked as if she was in deep thought. Not feeling like disturbing her any, he instead rose to his feet with his file in hand and moved to place it back where he got it from. As he was placing it back in the cabinet, he heard Altair begin to talk once again. On another matter, have you been wondering why your file has been updated so much recently? Yes, but why? Or were you volunteering the information anyway? I figured it was because of my mission completion rate. I haven't looked at Erza's file, I'd assume it's the same for her. Not really. While your amount of success has brought you some attention from the council, Seagrain has taken a special interest in you lately, and he's had me observing you a lot. Not that I can complain, you are fun to watch. Naruto turned to look at her after replacing his file, noting that she had stood up as well and was standing barely a few steps away from him now, observing him intently. I can't imagine I'm all that interesting. She chuckled slightly, tucking a few loose strands of hair behind her ear. I'll admit things have been a little slow lately, though it looked like you enjoyed your vacation. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Yes, I did. It was a nice change of pace. I was wondering if that really was your presence I felt. Altair grinned at him, shrugging slightly. If you did see me, it means I wasn't doing my job properly. I'm impressed that you could sense something, considering how far away I was most of the time. But it is a good thing you enjoyed that vacation, because I'm rather certain things are going to be getting crazy soon. You sure are offering a lot of information to me. Is there something you're going to want? Altair took the few steps that closed the distance between them, but stopped next to him, so that her shoulder was brushing his. Turning her head to look at him, she began to whisper, maybe. Let me plant an idea in your head, and we'll see how it works out, Naruto could feel his spine start to tingle. He didn't like the way that the inspector was looking at him. If it's something within reason, I'll consider it. I can't promise you more than that. She gave him what he interpreted as a sweet smile. It was one he had never seen from her before. Fair enough. As a small favor to you, I'll tell you that Seagrain is planning something big. I'm sure you'll be notified somehow as soon as it starts. I would tell you more, but I still do have loyalty to him as my superior, if for no other reason. Besides that, if you're too prepared, then it won't be any fun to watch. Naruto's eyebrow raised, but he said nothing. Taking that as a cue of his understanding, one corner of Altair's mouth twitched upwards before she continued. When he first told me of this plan of his, I laughed at him. But then he showed me how powerful he really was, and I was fairly well convinced that he'd be able to pull it off. But then along came Fire Shadow. Now, I know it will fail. What? How do you know it? Why? Naruto's eyes shot wide open when Altair silenced him by placing two of her fingers over his lips, giving him another one of those rare smiles. I know it will fail because I believe you are stronger than he is, and from my observations I know you will not sit idly by while he puts his plan into effect. When it does fail, there will be an open spot on the council that will likely need to be filled. I think you would do well as a temporary replacement, if not eventually a permanent one. All I ask in return for this information is that when the time comes, you at least consider accepting the position. Well, how can you guarantee it will be offered to me? Altair's demeanor changed in such a way to make it seem like she was teasing him, one corner of her lips twitching up slightly as her eyes squinted. Trust me. Keeping his mouth shut, Naruto's eyes closed briefly as he slowly nodded his head. What, seriously? Another one of your species offers you a way to gain power through potentially devious means and you aren't immediately turning it down. Someone pinch oh, I see what you did there. Quiet, Kyuubi, I'm thinking. You've made me a happy woman. Altair pressed her two fingers to her lips, then pressed them against Naruto's cheek, causing him to involuntarily lean back a bit. Unperturbed, Altair continued talking. That's all I can say for now, but I'll be in touch with you soon with a few details the next time I go out on an inspection detail so you can prepare. Oh, and be so kind as to not mention this to anyone, especially not Makarov Dreyar. I'd hate to have to read about this little meeting in a report. If this brings harm to anyone in Fairy Tail, I won't do whatever it is you're suggesting. Altair simply grinned at him, lightly patting his forearm as she began to walk away. Nothing will happen to Fairy Tail during the course of this so long as they don't put themselves in the way. But that's all I can guarantee. I'm sure you know how free-spirited they can be. Her eyes fluttered closed before she opened them once again, looking at Naruto briefly. I'm afraid I must leave for now. Seagrain is summoning me. Without another word shared between them, Altair walked back the way she came, and Naruto listened to her footsteps as they gradually got lighter. I wonder if I should follow through with this. I don't know why you wouldn't. For once, everything seems incredibly right. That's precisely why I think it's wrong. I'm supposed to be watching for things like this. It didn't quite happen the way I was preparing for it to. Hell, I don't like this whole situation, but on top of that, don't leave a demon hanging, out with it. She didn't feel right. I didn't see you touch her, unfortunately. Not like that, I meant her chakra, her magic core. I already know she's powerful, but something felt off. Almost as if there was something that was letting her power show through, but blocking it as well. Where you come from? I thought Shinobi did that all the time. Not in the same way. She wasn't hiding it. It's almost like her power was muffled. Bah, it's too hard to explain. Yeah, you're right, I'm bored already. Let's go kill this Seagrain guy and take his council seat. You don't seriously think they'd give me his seat after I kill him, do you? Maybe, maybe not. Never know until you try. If they don't, kill them all, and give the other seats to your minions. Not this again. What? You should be used to it by now. Naruto. Halting his march towards the exit, the blonde pivoted his frame to turn around and look over his shoulder, where the voice came from. Ah, Seagrain, I'm sorry, but I don't have Erza with me today. Seagrain chuckled briefly as Naruto turned around to face the blue-haired mage with the facial tattoo under his right eye. In fact, the man was completely identical to Mistogen physically. Their only differences were that Mistogen was a recluse and you literally had to beg for him to talk, whereas Seagrain loved to talk and lapped up all the attention he could get. If he didn't know that Mistogen was from another dimension, he would easily have mistaken them for the same person. I know she isn't here, I actually wanted to talk to you for a moment, if you have the time. Naruto shrugged. Sure, I've got time. I wasn't going to do anything but head back to Fairy Tail anyway. Seagrain nodded. I see, well this works out then. I have a message that the council needs you to deliver to the meeting spot of the masters. I believe it's somewhere in Clover Town, at the end of the train tracks going southwest. The council member pulled a sealed envelope out of his vest, and stretched his arm out to hand it to Naruto. The blonde accepted it, tucking it inside a pocket of his own Fairy Tail vest. Will I be able to make it there in time? Seagrain shrugged nonchalantly. The meeting should still be going on for another couple of days. Other than perhaps myself, you're the fastest mage in Fury. I think you'll have plenty of time. Very well. Is there anything else? The blue-haired man was quiet for a moment, looking down at his feet briefly before looking up at Naruto again. Yes, actually, I'm curious, what is Erza to you? Surprised at not only the question, but also how bluntly it was asked, Naruto simply stared at Seagrain for a few moments before he found his voice and was able to reply. We are partners on a team. She's probably my best friend. We spar on a fairly regular basis if neither of us is on a mission, either as a team or solo. But I think you'd already know all of that, wouldn't you? It should be in our files. Everything you said is, yes. I want to know how you personally feel about Erza. Naruto blinked rapidly, processing this request. Why would Seagrain want, or even need to know, other than to harass Erza even more? Is there a reason behind why you're asking? From all the times you've talked to Erza when we had to stop in Erza, I'm surprised you didn't ask her then. Seagrain smiled, but it held no warmth. She refuses to talk about you in front of me. That alone lets me know that she feels strongly for you, as a friend or otherwise. I used to be a very good friend to Erza a long time ago, which is why I want to make sure you are doing right by her. Naruto's eyes narrowed, and he placed one hand on his hip, shifting his weight slightly. Not that I really think it's any of your business, but we are on a very successful team together, and we trust each other with our lives. I think that should suffice as an explanation. Seagrain's lips morphed from the cold smile into a thin, compressed line. Very well, I guess it wouldn't be polite for me to pressure you too deeply on the matter. The fact that you both refuse to give me a straight answer leads me to believe there is more going on than meets the eye. I hope, for your sake, that you treat her well. Is that a threat? Take it however you will. We are old friends. I am interested in her well-being. Nothing more, nothing less. Naruto tried his best to keep his pose neutral, but Seagrain was pissing him off. It wasn't easy. Fine. Is that all? Seagrain snorted, then waved his hand. The man promptly disappeared from sight without a trace immediately after. TCH, mental projection. I wouldn't have hit him even if I had swung at him, if he didn't want me to. So, you are going to kill him and take his seat on the council, right? If I can find a way to do it without killing him, then yes. He doesn't deserve death just because he's a nosy ass. You may not have a choice, though that female from earlier made it sound like he was going to lose his seat anyway if you win at, whatever it will be. I hope it will be a bloodbath. What else is new? The following night. What is that? It's huge. Lucy was so startled that she took a step backwards, only to trip over her own feet and fall on her rear. Ah, we're dead. Happy quickly ran around Lucy, cowering and shaking behind the now seated girl. Ooh ah, I'm starving. I can smell some tasty souls nearby. I'm gonna eat them all. A giant monster made of warped-looking wood casually surveyed the area around it, clenching and releasing its clawed hands slowly. Just a moment ago that monster had been a small flute called Lullaby. Something caused it to change into the demon before them. Lucy's attention snapped over to Natsu when he let out a yell, then tossed Gray an absurd question: souls are edible. Are they tasty too? Not paying attention to whatever Gray's response might have been, she instead turned her focus towards the guild master, Makarov, who was standing next to her with a pensive look on his face. Several masters of other guilds were also standing nearby. That's a demon, right? How could it come out of a regular flute? Makarov closed his eyes and sighed. The devil was the flute. It was given a life by living magic, something only Zirf could do. That's probably why the flute had its own name, Lullaby. Living magic. Makarov nodded and looked off to the distance. Lucy followed his gaze to see Erza and Gray prepare an attack against the demon. Living magic is something that gives life to inanimate objects. Zirf usually chose to use the souls of demons when he gave life to the objects. It is one of the reasons why he was so feared. The flute was a leftover artifact from long ago. The small group watched as Erza and Natsu started performing combination attacks, but a swipe from one of the devil's large claws forced them to break off. The moment they were out of the way, Gray sent a few large blasts of ice flying at the creature. It merely swatted them away, then proceeded to attempt a counterattack as large bursts of demonic-looking energy shot out of its mouth. Gray managed to create a barrier shield, blocking the attack while simultaneously garnering comments of amazement by many of the other masters about his speed at creating the ice. Lucy watched with rapt attention as the three members of Fairy Tail continuously rained blows upon the huge demon, which was getting slower after every attack. Finally they all managed to land fairly powerful coordinated attacks upon the demon, and with a grunt it tripped and started to fall backwards. Oh no, it's going to hit the meeting hall. Lucy half listened to the warning shouts all around her as she saw the demon falling backwards towards the meeting hall. If it fell on top of it, the large hall would become nothing but a pile of rubble. Much to everyone's surprise, however, there was a bright blue flash that appeared behind the demon for no more than a couple seconds, and even though it was already falling it was lifted back up off its feet and sent flying forward. Everyone watched it in shock as the demon literally flew forward this time, crashing into a nearby forest not far away. Who did that? Lucy heard Master Makarov chuckle lightly, and when she turned to look he had an amused glint in his eye and was rubbing his beard in thought. I can't say for certain, but I have a good idea. If it is who I think it is, he's awfully far from where he was supposed to be. Lucy began to scramble to her feet. Wait, why you mean it was? Ah, there you are, old man. What the heck was going on here? Lucy whirled around only to see Fire Shadow walking up towards them casually in his full mage gear. She noted that others nearby were murmuring, likely about what happened, but she couldn't hear anything clearly. Ah, it wasn't anything that Erza, Natsu, and Gray couldn't handle. I'm sure Lucy would have stepped in to help if it looked like they needed it. Lucy blushed deeply as Makarov patted her on the arm, choosing to keep her mouth shut. In truth, she had already used her summons in earlier fights. They were all tired and she was running dangerously low on energy herself. I believe it. Anyway, as for why I'm here, Seagrain stopped me as I was leaving Era and asked me to play messenger boy and deliver this to you. It's something from the council. Rubbing his hand over a marking on his belt, there was a small burst of smoke, followed by the envelope appearing in his hand. He immediately handed it over. Makarov looked at the envelope curiously, but before he could open it, there was the sound of approaching footsteps accompanied by a loud voice. Hey, Fire Shadow, did you see how awesome we just were? I got to use my brilliant flame attack and helped knock that demon out. Yeah, that was some pretty good stuff, Natsu. You guys make a good team, I'm impressed. As they got closer, Lucy found it hard to keep the smile off her face, especially after hearing Gray mutter something about never wanting to work with Natsu ever again. They likely would have gotten into another fight as well, if Erza didn't take that moment to push between them, dragging another person behind her. Master, what do you want to do with Kageyama? I caught him trying to sneak off again. Makarov looked at the member of the Dark Guild Eisenwald, who was looking rather drained now that the whole ordeal with the lullaby flute was done, and obviously not paying any attention to what was happening around him. Lucy noticed that Makarov started to say something, but an exclamation by Fire Shadow cut him off. No way, Shikamaru, is that you? Kageyama quickly regained some energy, but it looked to be due to fright rather than anything else. Who are you? How do you know that name? Did my mother send you? I haven't gone by that name since I left home. Fire Shadow, whose body language started out rather excited, quickly settled. Home, do you mean Konohagakure no Sato? Kageyama's facial expression adopted a look of confusion as he peered at Fire Shadow, who was still wearing his mask. Never heard of it, I'm not from Fury. I see, that's a shame. You look exactly like someone I knew where I come from, but you're not him. Sorry to bother you. Kageyama still looked confused. Okay, whatever. Makarov spoke up. Just let him go, Erza. Are you sure, Master? Yes, I think he's learned his lesson today. Besides, since Fire Shadow will be able to recognize him easily, I doubt he'd want to bring any attention to himself, or am I wrong? Kageyama's eyes went wide as he looked from Makarov over towards Naruto. No way, Fire Shadow. Naruto simply folded his arms across his chest and nodded slowly. I'll be good, I swear it, I'll even go back home, and take up the family business. I'm sorry. Chuckling, Makarov gestured to Erza, who frowned but released her grip on Kageyama. The former Eisenwald member took a few stumbling steps backwards, then immediately turned around and began to run away. They all sat in silence for a few moments, though Lucy could still hear Natsu and Happy ranting at Gray in the background. So what now? Makarov turned to Lucy, offering her a small smile. Well, since Fire Shadow nicely decided to save the meeting hall, I don't have to stick around and offer to pay for repairs. You all can head back to the guild, I'll be along shortly. I just need to tie up a few loose ends from the meeting. I'll go grab Natsu and Gray. Erza politely excused herself, and Lucy noticed as she brushed one of her hands against Fire Shadow's as she walked past him. By the way, old man, I can't say for sure, but I think it started, just like you were saying it would. Makarov had started walking back towards the hall, but immediately stopped short and turned back around to face Naruto. Lucy saw as he tossed her a quick glance before focusing on Fire Shadow. Well, it honestly took a bit longer to happen than I anticipated. Apparently there is more going on than we were both aware of. I'll fill you in on what I can. Makarov closed his eyes, letting his head lean forward a bit for a moment before he inhaled deeply and opened his eyes once again. I see. I'll need you to go tell Laxus that it's a go, so he can prepare. Fire Shadow nodded, of course. I think he's been getting antsy anyway. I know he has. Makarov chuckled, turning around towards the meeting hall once again. We'll talk more about this at the guild. Lucy and Naruto both watched as the small form of the fairy tale guild master got even smaller as he walked away. As soon as Lucy thought he was out of earshot, she asked the only question that was burning in the front of her mind, what was that about? The blonde girl rolled her eyes and sighed. What started? Something is up, obviously. Fire Shadow laughed, then closed the distance between them and ruffled her hair a bit, causing her to yelp and then grumble as she tried to fix it. It's nothing you need to worry yourself about. Now, let's get back. I haven't eaten all day and I hear the magic ramen calling my name all the way from the guild. Huffing, Lucy fell into step behind the still chuckling Fire Shadow. She'd find out what was going on, one way or another. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.